Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Canine Connection podcast. Today, Laurie and I are going to talk about variable reinforcement. So that's just a fancy word to say being unpredictable with when you give your cookies or your toy. Humans are super predictable, and dogs are desperately looking for information, right? Like they have no idea what we're doing or why. Like we have this end picture. This is what we want the behavior to look like, or this is what we want it all to look like when we go in the ring. And the dog's just operating in the vacuum, right? Like it's just sitting there and it's like, oh, okay, cookies or a toy are on the table. How do I get it? Right? So when we teach something, we usually go, the dog does one thing, we mark whether we click or use a word, and then we give the dog a treat or a cookie. And then we theoretically, as the dog gets more advanced, we give fewer cookies. I say theoretically because it doesn't always happen. And at some point, when we give the cookies, needs to become we have to give less cookies first and foremost. That's like a huge thing, or toys. And B, it has to be very unpredictable. So I tell my students it has to be unpredictable in two ways. One, the dog should not know when it's going to get a cookie. So it's very common, like in obedience. I think it's in a lot of things. The dog does an exercise, the dog does the finish, and then the dog gets a cookie. So what happens? The dog expects a cookie there. If you don't give the dog a cookie there, the dog is confused. I get so frustrated when people say, they're only working for the cookies, or they're lazy, or they don't want to do it unless we pay them. First of all, when's the last time you went to work and said, you know what? Don't pay me. I just feel like doing it.
Right.
Doubt it. Right. Secondly, if you get paid every week or every other week and suddenly your pay isn't there, do you just go, no big deal, I'll get it another day? Or do you go, whoa, 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 what happened? Why did I not get my money? You start calling people, you start complaining, you start tracking it down. Where's my money? Because you've created an expectation. You do X amount of work, you get paid, right? So we create an expectation. And I also think personally that how often we reinforce, it becomes part of the picture, right? Like the dog is like, oh, this is the picture. We train, and every 30 seconds or every 5 seconds or every how often I get reinforced. And it's now, if you change that suddenly, go in the ring and get nothing, again, the picture looks very different, because instead of like some work broken by a reinforcement event, then a little more work broken by a reinforcement event, all of a sudden it's just work, 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 work. Well, that looks completely different.
Yeah. And that, when you say that, like the dogs see it in pictures, that's just to me, like they are so good at patterning all that stuff. Like they literally, I swear, like I would say, say this to my students, like they almost become like they have like a clock on them, because and that's what we do. Like we do X behavior, we reinforce. We do Y behavior, we reinforce. And that constant rate and continuous pattern develops really quickly in the dogs. And then, like you said, that expectation happens. And then if all of a sudden you just go to no payment, then that's where the dogs get confused. So this is why, like, this is, to me, one of the biggest pieces that's missing in a lot of people's training, that mindfulness of starting that variable reinforcement rate, because I feel like our emotional state gets involved big time, and we want the dogs to be happy and we want the dogs to be right. So what are we doing? We're constantly paying the dogs. So yeah.
Like the minute, so first of all, which is, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole because it's a whole nother multiple episodes, but like the second the dog starts to struggle, I'm not talking about all out fail, like just struggle. Like the dog is unsure. Like I just had a student recently, I was trying to get her to shape her dog, right? So clearly I could tell literally within seconds that she says, oh yeah, I shaped the dog. I could tell within seconds she truly doesn't shape the dog, because as soon as the dog got no information, so it would do a few behaviors,
Mhm.
which were not the ones we wanted, and then it would just stand there and do nothing. Like literally, it would just do nothing because it was waiting for her to help the dog,
Right.
right? And because she's like, oh God, I got to help the dog so I could give the dog a cookie.
Mhm.
So the
Mhm.
dog isn't struggling. And I'm like, first of all, struggle, there's a scale. I don't think that was a real struggle, but the dog, we're not comfortable with the dog having a child. So the dog stands there, does nothing. Let me do something. Dog looks worried. Let me jump in and give you a cookie. Dog
Yeah.
looks unsure. Rather than take a second, go, why? Okay, what can I do to help this dog? Grab the cookie or the toy, right? Take the dog somewhere challenging, dog's distracted, get a cookie or toy out.
Yeah.
Like that's what we do. And it becomes kind of like a crutch. And then my favorite is giving cookies for nothing.
Yeah, the
So
free
I'll be
cookie
like,
sign. Yep.
why did you just give that cookie? I don't know.
Well, or half the time they're like, "Oh, I did?" I
Yeah,
didn't
I
even know they
did.
did it, right?
So, for sure, a big thing to do is take the food off your body, right?
Yeah.
Because that's going to make it more challenging for you to just give these cookies that or toys that you're not even aware that you're doing. Like there has to be a reason why. And yes, when I have a young dog and I'm teaching a behavior, I'm giving a lot of cookies. There's a
Right.
reason for that.
Right.
I'm teaching it and I'm shaping it. And every time the approximation gets closer, I give a cookie. But
Right.
at some point, like my dogs jump into heel position, there is no thought behind that. It is a habit, it's
Mhm.
automatic. It's like driving a car. I do not ever give my dogs cookies for jumping into heel position. Like once they know how to do it and they're doing it consistently, they never get a cookie for that. They
And
don't
that
need to.
Yeah, and that I think is the key thing that people aren't quite clear about because especially in the teaching phases, we get the puppies and we are starting to teach them little behaviors, shaping things, and the rate and reinforcement's going to be higher because we want to reinforce every little step, every little piece that we're shaping and teaching. And then we also want to put value on all of those behaviors, right? But once, like, I just talked to my students this weekend about it. Even in my puppies, once I
Mhm.
see that little piece of behavior is totally fluent, I'm talking, my puppies start spinning on their own. They start offering it. Like, I don't even have to say it anymore. They're like, it's just become self reinforcing. That little piece is now fluent. Even in my puppies, I'm mindfully saying, I'm not going to reinforce that. Like the rate now is going to decrease. And I'm going to mindfully start even putting that behavior on a variable reinforcement schedule, right? So that I'm starting to introduce that to the dog.
And it's important. It's like when I watch someone give their dog a ton of cookies, like I'm always like, God, because I know already, even when I have a 7-week-old puppy, I know that one day this dog is going to have to go in the ring
Right.
on a
Right.
given day and perform for like 9 minutes, give or take, and do an enormous number of behaviors in an enormously long, very complex chain with, distractions, pressure, and so on, with
Mhm.
no reinforcement at all. So that is in my mind from day one. And so you should constantly be asking yourself, does my dog need this cookie or can I get rid of it? Like,
Mhm.
can I get rid of this cookie? Like, maybe sometimes my dog will need some cookies for certain behaviors to kind of refresh it or to keep it sharp. But certain behavior, there are a lot of behaviors my dogs do that like never need a cookie again or very rarely need cookies again.
Right. And
And
yeah,
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to jump in because I think that is always, and it never was when I first started out. Like I didn't even know about any of that stuff. So of course, like when I had Mary, like I was a fucking Pez dispenser. Like I didn't know better. So this is something I think that's just a lot of people just aren't aware of or they're just not being mindful. But it is, you have to say, what is my end goal? My end goal is that my dog needs to be able to go work for duration without that tangible reinforcer on me in a hard environment, which is going to be the trial, the ring.
Mhm.
And also you can layer that on, like, what are your goals? Well, I'd like to do tournaments, or I'd like to do multi-day shows. Like, that's even harder. You're coming out of the ring and then X amount of time goes by, you got to go back in the ring. And that can be over a course of 2-3 days, right? So that is what you have to always be keeping in your mind, like, just from the get-go, like we said with the puppies or a young dog that you're starting out, pay attention to where those behaviors are starting to be. You don't need to reinforce them every rep, you know?
And I think too, and this is a huge misconception, right? Like when things get hard, or to keep dogs in the game, or to maintain
Mhm.
effort in people's minds, they
Mhm.
need to pay a lot.
Mhm.
But actually, the opposite is true. So when I have someone asking the dog for tricks and giving a cookie for every single trick, right? The dog doesn't have to work that hard. So two things happen. One, if you reduce that rate of reinforcement, the dog gets anxious, right? Because it's like, ah, what's happening? What's happening? And it gets like stressed out. So that's one thing. But the other thing is the dog doesn't have to work as hard because it's getting paid every second. Like, why is it going to put in any effort? There's no reason for it to try hard or to push. There's no reason for it. It's not, is the dog lazy or not? My dog can be the most motivated dog genetically on the planet. If it's getting fed every second, why is it going to put effort in? So
Right.
then when I say to that person, ask the dog for 3 or 4 or 5 tricks in a row before giving a cookie,
Mhm.
right? What happens is by behavior 3, 4, the dog starts putting more effort in because
Mhm.
it starts going, hey, what the heck? What to do to get a cookie here, people? All right, how
Right.
about this? How about that?
Right.
Come on. And then it does, and it starts putting in more and more energy and effort, and you actually get more engagement. So people are inadvertently trying to achieve those things, and they think by subconsciously, I think a lot of times by giving more cookies they're heading in that direction, and they're actually doing the opposite.
Right.
They're
Right.
creating like a helpless dog that can't do anything because every second we're doing it for them.
Right, right, and that, like, I'm just, like, sitting there, like, it's literally like the dog. I don't know, I just had this weird, like, vision in my head, like, the dog is just, like, hanging out, like, by poolside, and you're just, like,
Yep.
you're just delivering the drink poolside every 5 seconds to
Every
the
5
dog,
seconds. Yeah, and
so
like why is a dog going to get up early and
right,
hustle
right, exactly,
when it's like, hello, where's
right,
my and they will start to say that, right? Because they you have created an expectation.
yeah,
So if you then go to every other behavior, after the first behavior, your dog's going to go, hey,
right,
what happened? What is happening, lady? And then because the dog doesn't immediately just do the second behavior, or it maybe does not, maybe it gets stuck, or
mhm,
maybe it just starts yelling at you, or
yeah,
maybe it, gets frustrated, and you're like, you say spin, and the dog's like sit down, and then you're like, well, you sat me down, so here's a cookie, but you didn't do what I asked, right?
mhm,
They panic, and then they give the dog what they wanted, another cookie. So you've created this vicious cycle that you get
mhm,
kind of stuck in. And then when you try and get the dog ready for the ring, never mind go in the ring, it all comes completely unglued. And then people say things like, well, my dog's that cookie stuff doesn't work, or they only work for the cookies, or my dog's lazy. If there's no cookie, my dog won't do it. No, you haven't taught your dog how to be able to do it
mhm.
for less reinforcement.
Right. And then what, like you said, what happens is they say, well, the cookie thing's not working, or the dog's only working for food now, so I'm going to get rid of all the food. Like,
Hmm.
literally people do that. They're like, I'm not feeding anything anymore. No cookies until like the whole entire training session's done. Like, you can't do that either.
No.
The food or the reinforcer is always on the table, like for my dogs. Like, I'm never going to do like a deprivation thing. It's never going to be like never there. Like, they know it's there. They know it's on the table, or they know it's in my pockets, or they know it's laying over on the floor. But it's up to us to start to create that path to the reinforcer, right? So that can look like in the very beginning, very quick, the high rate of reinforcer. And then you want to start to develop the path being sometimes you get a cookie here, not always. The length of time that you work, when are you going to get that cookie? So that's that variable part. Cause I think people get really stuck. The big thing I see is, you go and take a class, you're new to this, and everybody's got their bait bags on. So the cookies are flying, right? On every little thing. Cookie, cookie, cookie. And then it's never mindfully talked about or taught on how to start to that variable reinforcement rate. So then by the time people are looking to put their dogs in the ring, that's where the big problem lies. And then they're stuck and they don't understand why their dogs look like they want to die.
Hmm.
That's the big missing piece.
So I think the first thing I have my students do, which helps tremendously, just it's like I'm not even asking you to variably reinforce. I'm just saying take the food and put it on the table.
Yep.
Just put it on a table.
Which is great because then the big thing I see is as soon as the dog starts to look uncertain, the hands go in the pockets. Like, I have
Mhm.
students who want to live there. And I'm like, you're not even allowed to wear anything with pockets anymore. Like, your food cannot even be on you because of that.
Yeah, and if the food is not on you, by default, you're not going to subconsciously just grab a cookie because it's not there, right? So
Exactly.
that's number one. Number two, humans are a little bit lazy. So now, if you have to go all the way over there and get a cookie, you're going to be thinking about why you're getting the cookie. The second thing I made them do is put a pad next to your cookies with a pen and write down why you gave that cookie.
Mhm.
Right? So I'm not
Mhm.
saying don't give any cookies. I'm just saying there should be a reason why.
Mhm.
Right? Like my dog usually goes slow over the broad jump. It went really fast over the broad jump. Great reason to give a cookie, right?
Mhm.
So go give that cookie. And I'm not saying initially, like, just by default you're going to be giving your dog less cookies, so now
Yeah.
you're automatically reducing how much you're reinforcing. Now you're writing down why, so you need to because people are not consciously thinking of why they are giving a cookie,
Yep.
right? There should be a reason for it. There's a reason why I give every reinforcement I give, and I'm always saying, do I need to give that here? Right? So I think that's always like a really good start. Then the other little kind of cheat trick I do is if my dog is like relatively fully trained, for example, and now I just want to like be unpredictable with where I give a cookie,
Mhm.
then again, cookies shouldn't be on you because you're just a creature of habit. You're going to do it. But I can tell if you train your dog in front of me, I can tell you exactly where you give cookies.
Yep.
Because if you heel and you do a halt, your dog's going to look at you and it's clear as day with their face going to say, cookie now, right? And you
Yep.
go, right. And you give the dog a cookie. So you don't want to so if I do something with my dog, and my dog looks at me and goes, cookie now, right? I will not give them a cookie. And
Mhm.
I'll make a mental note. My bad. Clearly, I've been feeding here
Too
enough
much. Yep.
for
Yep.
my dog to expect it. Now, if I give a cookie in places like the middle of an about turn, middle of right turn, middle of a slow pace, and my dog looks surprised, perfect. It means I don't usually reinforce there. My
Yep.
dog's like, whoa, I just got a cookie. Holy cow. I
Yep.
didn't know that was even on the table. Right?
Right.
That surprise, that's what you want. Because if you surprise your dog routinely, your dog's going to start giving you more effort, more engagement, right? Because it's like, holy cow, I have no idea when a cookie's coming. It could be coming like at any time. So like I'm going to keep trying harder and harder and harder cuz like surely now is it coming now? How
Yep,
about now? How
yep,
about now? Now is it coming? Like which is different than I expect it now cuz you always give it to me here,
right,
right? And
right.
then when you don't give it there in the ring, the dog is, and rightly so,
Disappointed.
very disappointed, and even more importantly, confused.
Yeah,
And
right,
that confusion leads to lack of confidence, and then that's gonna spill forward into the work, and it's just gonna get worse and worse as the dog's not getting any cookies or toy in the
right.
ring.
Right. And that's the thing, with that constant, those consistent spots you're reinforcing where you can see the dog is kind of demanding or expecting that reinforcer to come. A big one I see is a great example is, the dog is called front on a recall. And like within a second of sitting there, the dog just does an auto finish with that look of expectation of, this is where I get my cookie. This is where I get my cookie. That's a big one. And like you said, there's that expectancy on the dog. And then what happens is you can see it clear as day where all that patterning has happened with the constant reinforcement in certain places. Because then when the cookie or reinforcer is not presented, you literally can see the dog's entire expression change. There's just that like total letdown emotional state happens, and like you said, it'll spill into the rest of the stuff because now the dog is confused and worried and so on and so forth, for sure.
Yeah, so you have to, so I look at it in two ways. One is in training, I don't want to be predictable, right? Now you can literally get an app and it can just give you a tone at a variable time. It'll go beep and then you can randomly give cookies if you have a hard time because you do have to actually pay attention,
You
right?
do.
Like you do have to say to yourself, because it has to be variable, meaning not, I don't mean that every time now you give your dog a cookie at 30 seconds. It means sometimes you give a cookie at 1 second, sometimes at 45, sometimes at 20,
Right.
sometimes at 60. Like it truly means it is completely unpredictable. There is no pattern. We don't know when it's coming. So there's that within a session. And then there's also session to session. So, yes, I do have sessions where my dogs will get more cookies in
Yep.
that session. So
Yep.
if I'm working on perfecting my fronts, my dogs get a lot of cookies for that. Or if I'm working on like pieces, keeping them really sharp, a lot of detail work, I'll tend to give more cookies. But then the next day, I'm not going to do the same thing. The next day, I'm going to do something different, and my dog's going to get less cookies in that session. And then I
Hmm.
have some sessions where I work on chaining, which means I do a long piece and then my dog gets a jackpot. And in that training session, my dog might only get 3 times. If I do 3 training sessions in that training session, my dog's only getting 3 reward events. Yes, they're big events like they're jackpots, but there's only 3 of them in that session.
Right after all the chains. Yep.
Yeah, so even throughout the week, there are some training sessions where you won't get a lot of reinforcement, and there are some where, so even
Right.
there, it's unpredictable.
Yeah, and that's the mindfulness of, make that's the mapping out and being paying attention to what you're doing. That goes along too with your training sessions week by week because that's the thing. Like you don't want to have every time you train, you're working on stuff that the dogs are just getting cookies right, left, and center for every freaking rep because you're working on that. You have to make sure you're putting those training sessions in where you're working on the variable reinforcement, which is putting in some mindful duration pieces where, the dog might do 3 recalls and maybe on the last one the dog gets reinforced, so that's where you have to make sure that you're really paying attention because if you're like, for the past 3 weeks, my dog's been getting every session getting rapid fire rate of reinforcement, you're not putting it into your training. Like you have to make sure you're putting that in for sure.
Yeah, and I start doing, so like one of the simplest ways to do it early on is just with tricks. right?
Yep, yep,
Like I'll start doing this with a puppy very
yep,
young. Like,
yep,
yeah, first I teach each trick. So it's getting a cookie, or even when I'm breaking the trick into pieces, multiple cookies per trick. But as soon as my dog understands the tricks really well, now I ask for two tricks, then give a
yep,
cookie. And then I ask for three tricks and then give a cookie. And then I'll ask for four tricks and then give a cookie. And now my dogs will do five, six, seven tricks, and they don't even expect a cookie. They don't even want a cookie. They don't even care
right,
because one, I've changed the expectation, and two, and this is really important, the behaviors become inherently self-reinforcing, right?
right, and
So the
you're developing that path to the reinforcer where the dog wants to start to work harder to gain reinforcer, like you had said, like, "Oh, is it coming now? Oh, let me do this. Let me work hard because it's gonna come. Eventually, I know it's gonna come." That's the thing. You'd wanna teach the dog. It will come. Like I said, it's never deprivation. It's always on the table at some point. I'm always gonna pay the dog at some point, and that's what I want my dog to start to learn.
And I think the other thing people have to really change their mindset about is like that if the dog struggles a little bit or works hard, like that's a negative. Like,
Mhm.
I've written so many blogs about this. Like, when I do something that's challenging for me, and it doesn't have to be like running a marathon. I mean, like, my washer wasn't working right, my washing machine. I don't know anything about appliances. I don't consider myself good at fixing things, whatever. But I go online, I Google it. I'm like, okay, like I take out, the screwdriver. I have no idea what I'm doing, and I fix it. I feel so freaking good about that
Mhm.
because it was hard, because it's not something that I'm comfortable with. Nobody helped me. I figured it out on my own. And I'll be like, I fixed my washer. I fixed my washer.
I didn't have to call anybody.
And I did it all by myself. I saved money on the repair guy. And I'm like, well, dogs are the same way. When
Yeah.
my dogs figure something out or do something hard, they don't sit there and go, oh, that sucked. I hated that. I don't. No, if it's done properly, my dogs are so proud of themselves.
Yeah.
Feels good for them to problem solve and figure things out. They're like, I did it. Look
Mhm.
at me. They stick their chest out. Zaina barks, of course, because, that's how she rolls. But like, they're happy. So this whole mindset of like, oh no, oh, the dog's not sure, throw it a cookie. Oh, break it down, help, help. I'm not saying make your dog fail. Failure and struggle are two different things.
Totally.
Right? But a little bit of failure is normal in learning. I fail all the time when I learn, and
Yep.
struggle is healthy, and struggle builds confidence and resilience. So when my dogs are like, maybe I start lengthening and healing. So now I go a little further. My dog looks a little unsure, like, oh, I'm not sure. And I, with my body, convey confidence, like, nope, you're good. Let's do a little more. And we go
Right.
a little further. And the dog's like, I don't know, is this right? And then I go, yes. I see a very different dog.
Right.
Then, as soon as my dog struggles, I go, okay, here's a cookie, or let me help you. It's not the same. They don't look the same.
Exactly.
And you want that, you're taking that away from the dog. Like, you're taking away the dog's opportunity to push through and to have that feeling like, oh, I just did that. Look at me. Like,
Right, right, right.
check me out. And
And the ring is hard. You so d wanna develop they're going to struggle, it's going to be hard. And that's what you wanna build too in their training, just like you were talking about, like, when it gets hard in the ring and we can't help them,
Mhm.
that's where we wanna develop that push. We want the dogs to push through that when it gets hard, and that's how we can do that in training, just like you were talking about.
Yeah. So another thing people should think of is like, it's this weird thing, right? They think of tricks as tricks, and tricks are fun, and tricks are happy, and everybody loves tricks. And then they think of competition behaviors are serious. Well, if you just treat them, each piece like little tricks and train it like little tricks, then in essence, all your dog is doing is putting a series of tricks together. And if
Mhm.
you make those individual pieces fun and self reinforcing, then you can use that to help your dog initially, especially like push through to get, a little bit further before you have to give that reinforcement, right?
Right.
Or you could throw a trick in. So, like, I teach my dogs to bounce in healing. So, if I'm healing and my dog's like, oh God, I didn't get a cookie yet. Am I right? I'm not sure. I don't know what to do. And I don't want to give you a cookie yet. I can say bounce. My dog goes, oh, I can do that. And my dog's like, oh, I love to bounce. I'm really happy. That
Mhm.
lets me go a little bit further.
Mhm.
Now I can reinforce. So
Mhm.
it gives me a tool to help the dog go a little further before I give the reinforcement. And then the dog learns, like, just because I didn't get it yet doesn't mean it's not coming. It's just not coming yet.
Mhm.
It will come at some point, right? And the more unpredictable you make it, the more it's the gambling effect, right? It's the social media scrolling effect.
Mhm.
It's the reason we keep scrolling is because maybe, just maybe, we're going to find that one thing after we scroll through 80 things that we find interesting,
Right.
right? And then that's good enough to keep us scrolling. And we're like, then we see something that kind of interesting, but no, yeah, it's not as interesting as what I wanted. And that's enough to keep us scrolling, keep scrolling.
Yep.
So we also want to throw different things in there that are what they call, when they talk about like gambling, near misses, right? It's when you see apple, apple, and you're like, oh my God, one more apple and I win the jackpot, and it's a
Yep.
pear. And you're
Yep.
like, damn it, but you are so close.
Yep.
You're like, boom, you're like, "Oh, I'm in it now. I'm going to
Yep.
keep going."
You're hooked.
So you can do things like praise your dog. Wow, buddy, that was super. I love that. That's really nice. All right, let's do a little more. Dog might initially go, but I didn't get a cookie. It's all right, buddy. Let's keep going.
Right.
Right. And after a while, your dog learns that sometimes it just gets praised. Or sometimes it might go, that was super, buddy. Twist, spin, bounce, wave. Okay. And that's all we're doing. That's your quote unquote reinforcement event, is we're doing that. And now we're going to keep going. So you can put some other things in there that become like, that are still giving the dog positive feedback, but they become like those near misses, those
Mhm.
two apples, right? Like, oh, I almost got a cookie, but not quite. And no, it doesn't make the dog give up. It does the opposite. It makes the dog go, oh, like, okay, let me keep trying, or let me try harder.
Right.
And then eventually I'll get the quote unquote jackpot, which is, the reinforcement, whether it's cookies or a toy.
Right.
So I think that's what people need to think about. I just started this. So we have a word. Well, I have a marker. Yes, when I say yes, it means that's correct and you're getting a cookie. So that's a
Mhm.
contract. I can't
Yep.
suddenly break that contract because I'm lying. And now yes is going to lose its power. And now I'm not being honest with my dog. Good means that's correct. Keep going. You'll get a cookie like eventually. So that word means something else. I'm creating a word now that I'm calling my jackpot word. That means you might get a cookie. You might get a toy. You might get a game. You might get praise. Like, you're going to get that's so it's basically saying what you just did is correct and you're going to get something, but I don't know what. So now I have a word that I could use it in the ring as well, because I'm not lying. If I say to the dog, wow, and
Mhm.
then I just praise the dog, that's fair because I do that sometimes in training.
Right.
But again, you have to use the word mindfully, because you have to kind of say to yourself, well, the last 3 times I said I praised, then I did some tricks. Well, okay, the fourth time I'll give a cookie, and then maybe next time I'll do some trick. Like, it has to be very unpredictable, right? So
Right.
that means now I think what you could potentially do, especially when you're first doing this, is just write it down. Like, write down the sequence you're going to use,
Mhm.
But it's a nice little way to kind of practice consciously being unpredictable in just like one small area.
Right. And I think that's key because there's a lot of people who become aware of the fact that at this point they have been just giving too many cookies all the time and haven't developed any sort of variable reinforcement schedule with their dog. And then they get stuck on how to change that. So that's a really good point. And I even well, and I do this myself sometimes. I just tell students too, like, just write down, even just write it all out, like just a simple little sequence of things, whether it's just tricks or just simple obedience behaviors, whatever it is. And then you can literally write down, like, plan the whole thing out. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And on a third one, I'm going to reinforce. Like, so sometimes that helps just to have it written out, a little plan you can follow so that you can start really mindfully it's really just paying attention to where and how you're reinforcing. And it can be done. Like, people get really kind of dismayed by the fact that they think like they've ruined their dog. Now the dog's only working for that constant rate of reinforcement. But you can change it, but it has to
Hmm.
be done. It has to be done, really mindfully. You can't just all of a sudden rip food away because you have to teach the dog. They don't know, they don't know any other way.
And the other thing is do it in the middle. Like people are so stuck on like doing something at the
The
end,
end.
right?
Yeah,
Like the end of a
exactly.
series or the end of a behavior or the end of whatever. Like
Yep.
just if you just simply do it in the middle.
Yep.
Like if you're healing, don't feed the sit. Like I almost never feed my halls.
Right. Right.
Like I feed at weird, unpredictable spots
Yep.
where I'm like, I'm in the middle of a fast. I'm like, I haven't fed here in a while, and I just spit a cookie, like in the
Mhm.
middle of the fast. Just here's a cookie, like, and the dog's like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Or on a transition, like, do your exercise, start moving to a new spot, and in the middle of doing that, feed there,
Right.
right? Or feed the middle of an exercise or some part of the exercise where you almost never feed, right? And
Mhm.
like I said, if your dog, just test it out, because if your dog looks surprised, then clear as day, you are not feeding there, right? Because your
Mhm.
dog's like, whoa, I didn't even see that coming, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes they don't even see the cookie. And I'm like, oh, wow, certainly don't feed there, right? Just think about being unpredictable and tell yourself, I am never feeding the end,
Yep.
right?
Or
And
the
just
halt.
make a habit out of feeding or reinforcing in other spots, in weird, unpredictable spots. So that, and same as, I was listening to a podcast about this. It was talking about, when the scent work.
Yep.
Like, okay, you can't feed in the middle there, but you don't have to feed after every single search. Let the dog do two and then feed. Let the dog do three and then feed. Let the dog do one and then feed. And then therein is where you just need to become like unpredictable. And you could literally, like, you could go online and look it up or get an app. There's apps that'll do it for you, like, and write it down. Okay, I'm going to feed after the fifth rep, after the
Yep.
ninth, after the second, after, and then this way you don't have to go, oh, I don't remember. All right, I'll just give him a cookie. Because that's what
Right.
you're going to do, right? We're going to go, oh, I'm not sure. Okay. And like I said, when the dog is unsure, don't panic. Just
Yep.
go, okay, I inadvertently created this. So now I'm teaching the dog the rules have changed. Is my dog going to be confused? Of course it.
Yep.
Yes, my dog will be confused. Okay, what am I going to do when my dog is confused? Well, I'm certainly not going to like start getting all worried and panicky and fumbling around. I'm going to stand up tall. I'm going to look confident, like I know what's going on. I'm going to look at my dog and I can even, if you feel like you need to, you can say, I'm sorry, buddy, I did this to you, but we're just going to go a little bit further. So
Yep.
come on, have a little faith in me. let's do a little bit more. And even if the next thing the dog does is a little bit slow or a little bit hesitant or a little bit sucky, whatever, who cares? Just get the dog to do it,
Yeah.
right? Do a little bit more and then say yes. And what, in essence, in that moment, you're teaching your dog is when you're not sure, keep going,
Going.
and then the reinforcement is going to come. That is what you are teaching the dog in that moment. And that is a super valuable thing to teach. So if you just expect that this is going to happen, you have a plan. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to confidently help my dog through this. And then when my dog gets past that point, I'm going to reinforce it. Then you're not going to get stuck and spiral. Your dog's panicking, you're panicking. Your dog's like, oh God, mom or dad are panicking. Now I'm panicking even more.
Yeah, which is what people do. They start to have a freak out over it when their dog starts to
Yes.
look sucky, and sometimes it'll even go the other way where then they start getting mad at the dog. Like, you can't. The dog doesn't understand it. So this is just teaching opportunities, right? So that's when we just help them. You can help them verbally. It's okay, you're doing a great job. Let's go do it again. Because the minute you go down that rabbit hole, like, then it's just going to spiral out of control for sure.
Yeah, and then they're going to go down that rabbit hole, right? And
Yeah.
it's expectation. Like, I expect my dog to go, huh, what, why didn't I get a cookie? So
Hmm.
I expect that. So when my dog looks at me like that, I'm not like, God, I go, and then I'm like, okay, let's keep going. Good job, buddy. You went a little further. And again, so my dog could spiral in one of two ways. It could get a little bit what we would call sucky, like slow or, unsure, doesn't look like we want. Don't worry about it initially. Just let them do it that way and then reinforce them. That goes away once they understand and they get more confident. Or the dog can spiral and go up like Zaina and start going, screaming at me, hey, I'm sure she's cursing up a storm. Then I just put my hand on her and I just say to her, like, calm down. You're fine. It's
Hmm.
all good.
Yeah.
We're going to go a little further. So stop screaming at me. Right. So I'll calm her down. And then I'm like, let's keep going. We go a
Hmm.
little further. Oh, look, now you're getting your reinforcer. And then she's like, oh, okay. And like I said, yeah, like anything new, they're not going to get it in one session or two sessions, right? There's going to be a period where
Yep.
they're learning
Yep.
the new rules, they're learning the new schedule,
Right.
right? But then once they understand, you will see that the dog actually works harder
Right.
because
Right.
it's like understands that it's coming. I just have to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And then eventually I get that reinforcer.
Right. And just be careful, like, when you start this out, like, if it's something that, like, where you're like, oh gosh, this is the light bulb moment. This is definitely what I need to start putting into my training. And your dog has not had any of that done. Like, you can't just go from, okay, now you're going to work for 30 minutes straight and then I'm going to give you reinforcers. So you need to do this in incrementally over time, building that understanding up for your dog so that you can eventually the dog can go longer and longer and longer. They start to push harder and harder and harder. So just be careful when you do start that you're not going all of a sudden, all right, well, today we're starting the variable reinforcement. So you're going to do 15 minutes of whatever without a cookie, because that's how we're going to
Right.
start teaching it. So you can't do that because the dogs really, they don't understand. And then you're going to have a dog that they're definitely going to panic on you.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to do it mindfully. And then people also say, and we're not saying, because we're not yet really talking about getting rid of reinforcement. We're just
Right.
saying be unpredictable. It
Predictable.
has to be unpredictable. But in that being unpredictable, there will be some spaces that are bigger or longer. So yeah, we can't go like too
Yeah.
huge, like right out of the gate, because the dog won't be able to do it. So again, if you write it down and you're like, okay, typically I give a cookie every 5 seconds or every one behavior, right?
Yep.
Okay, so two, three, maybe four, like one rep of four is realistic, or maybe one rep of three is realistic. So let me figure out now, let me draw my little chart and let me figure out how I'm going to mix it up so that my dog's not going from one cookie, one behavior to 5 times they're only getting a cookie for every four behaviors, and one time they're getting a cookie for one behavior, right?
Right. Right.
So again, yeah, it's planning it out and writing it out
Yep.
so that you're doing it in a mindful way. And again, it doesn't mean that all my training sessions are where my dogs are doing 20 behaviors
Yep.
or more for a cookie. Like I literally will have some sessions where they will get a ton of cookies that session because of what I'm working on, but
Mhm.
that's not every session. All my sessions are variable as well.
Right.
So, because people go, well, mom, it's not fun. My dog's never going to get hardly. No, there's no, it's always about the middle, right?
Yep. Yep.
It's always about balance, balancing everything out session to session and balancing it out within a session and starting to do that as early in your training as you possibly can. Ideally, starting that with your puppy,
Yeah.
going very quickly to not giving a cookie for every single behavior or
Right.
every little behavior. Certain behaviors become like habits,
Mhm.
right? So, like, that's the other thing. I want to reward my dogs for effort, right? So, if I take some cookies out and I get one of my dogs and I bring him into the sunroom and they're like, "Oh, we're training," and my dog jumps into heel position, I'm not feeding that because that
Mhm.
required zero effort. It's like a habit. They do it like automatically. Like there's no, why am I even feeding that? Like I don't need to.
Right.
Right. So again, it's like, well, if my dogs start, so if they, then I say, okay, you need to do way more than that to get like a cookie.
Mhm.
Right. And then they have to work even harder to get something that's worth a little more, like their toy. And they really have to work hard to get like a jackpot, like their meal, for example. Right.
Right.
So you're always want to, you have to just be mindful about, why are you giving these cookies or this toy? What am I trying to achieve? What am I trying to accomplish? And am I headed towards my end goal, which is that this dog must do X amount of behaviors in the ring before it comes out of the ring and can get a reinforcement?
Right.
And
Right.
I think people just, that's something they don't mindfully think about. And then you have to remember that we are just like our dogs, we are creatures of habit. So I find this happens. People start with food off them, they start with variable reinforcement, they do it for like a week, and then they're like, oh, for this session, I kept the cookies on me, and they'll have like a good reason for it. And all of a sudden, cookies are back on the body and they're reinforcing the same old way again.
Yep. Totally.
I'm like, what happened? Why is it on you again? Because it's a habit. And I find
It
when
is a
I have a
habit.
puppy and cookies are on me a lot, and then I'm like, all right, cookies off me, I'll find myself reaching in my pockets and
Yep.
I don't even have the food on me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then that always is a good reminder for me. I'm always like, wow, like, boy, did that happen quickly
Yeah,
that I
because you don't
got.
even realize you do it.
Yeah. And I'm like, because with my adult dogs, food's not on me, right? So I don't ever even go in my pockets because my
Right.
body's like conditioned, it's not there.
Yep. Yep.
But when I have a young dog and I feed a lot, and then I go to put the food off me, I'm like, holy Hannah, do
Yeah.
we fall into that trap quickly? And our minds want us to be efficient.
Yes.
And so therefore our minds say, food in my pocket is the most efficient thing,
Yep.
right?
Right. Right.
And so that's where we go. And it's not even a conscious decision many times. So you have to make this conscious decision and just say to yourself, food will not be on me anymore, which is
Right.
perfectly fine anyway, because dogs got to learn to work with food off you,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And then you just have to go over to where it is. And just that simple act alone will make you more thoughtful
Yeah.
about, about your reinforcement schedule and how often
Yeah, and being
you're reinforcing the
unpredictable.
dog. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's how often and it's being predictable, right? And like I said, the sooner you get your dog used to that, the sooner, the easier it's going to be for your dog and the easier it's going to be for your dog later when you have to, do super long chains for no reinforcement at all.
Right.
Your dog's
That's
not going to be like, what
yeah.
just happened?
Yeah, and that's the end goal, that's really, I mean, for what we do with our dogs, that's what we are preparing them to be able to do, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
don't be a Pez dispenser. Except, do you know what? This is how old I am. Like, a lot of people don't even know what a Pez dispenser is.
What?
I've said that, and people are like, "Oh, what?" And I'm like, "Oh God." Yeah,
God.
go look it up. Google it. But yeah, basically, you're just
Rapid fire.
you're just a
Yeah.
vehicle. You're just a thing that gives cookies
Yeah,
constantly.
yeah.
And keep in mind that I think this whole concept of like making the behaviors self reinforcing, like if you're giving cookies constantly, then the behavior's not becoming self reinforcing.
Right.
Like the dog has to do the behavior and then start enjoying to do the behavior
Mhm.
and do it a whole bunch of times without like this is what I find so fascinating. Like for example, my dogs bounce a lot, right? Because I teach it and I make it valuable to them. They bounce constantly, and I never reinforce it anymore, and
Right.
it doesn't go away.
Yep.
Like, they don't stop bouncing. Like,
Right.
I can't remember, literally, it's been years since I fed Zesty or Zaina's bounce, like in heel position, and they bounce constantly in training and in the ring. So, like, it hasn't gotten weaker. If anything, it's gotten stronger. Like, it's become inherently self reinforcing. So, you can do that with a bounce, why can't you do that with other behaviors?
Mhm.
Why are there not other competition behaviors that the dog does that the dog can learn to think is like, oh, this is just a super fun trick? And if your dog can do that, then that piece within the chain is becoming inherently self reinforcing. The dog doesn't even need a cookie there.
Right. Exactly.
So I think people just need to really think about this, and like anything with training, like, training should be thoughtful. Training requires us to think. And so this is something that we really need to think about, and we need to think about what we're doing when, within a training session over the course of time. Like, don't do this for a week and then stick the cookies back in your pockets.
Right, exactly. I think it's definitely like this is going to be huge. I'm hoping this is super helpful because I find as an instructor, this is a big piece that people get stuck on or they're not sure. Well, most of them actually know. Like, I'll be like, well, why do you think this is going on? And usually most people will go, well, I think it's because I use cookies all the time for everything. I
Yeah.
think we know, people kind of know that they created that.
But then they don't know how to get out of it.
That is exactly, they don't know how to how to fix it or how to,
Yeah.
teach the
And I
dog.
think it's from feeding a lot, then you have to switch to a variable reinforcement schedule, and the
Right,
dog has to be on that consistently. And then
right,
after that, which would be another episode, we have to teach the dog how to do long chains of behavior for no reinforcement and to understand that that means they're right, because
yeah,
dogs just think they're wrong when they don't get a cookie. But the first step is you have to switch to variable, and you have to stay on a variable schedule. And I think, yeah, I think people panic when their dogs struggle and their first thing is get a cookie out. So don't do that. Just convey confidence. Get your dog to keep going. Don't worry about it if it's a little bit sucky. Don't, go, oh God. It just get your dog to go a little bit further, then
mhm,
mark and be like, look, you did it. Good job. And, And when I first do this, if my dog looks confused and they keep going and then I give them the cookie, I make it a little bit more valuable, right? I won't just go click cookie. I'll go click. Wow, buddy, see, that was so good. You did it. So I'll add a little extra because you worked a little harder. So I'm going to
Mhm.
make it a little bit more of an event initially, right? Until the dog,
Definitely.
now my dogs are just like, yeah, whatever, we get it. But yeah, that's important. That first step, that variable reinforcement. And you have to plan it out. You have got to plan it out
Yep, for sure.
until that becomes a habit,
Right.
right? And you just have to constantly hold yourself accountable and be like, oh God, did I do that thing again? Was I predictable again? Gosh darn it. Okay. Back to, and whatever that looks like, whether it's writing it out, whether it's using an app. I think they literally have apps that will give a tone. It'll go beep at like variable times.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you can go, oh, cookie now, right? And if it's in the middle of something where you're like, I never give a cookie here, good,
Yeah, who cares? Yeah.
perfect. That's what you should be doing. So there are things that can help you if you need that help. Yeah, that's super important. Younger you start that, better it'll be for your dog. But if your dog's older and you've never done it before, it's not like, oh, well, now you're sunk.
Right.
You can still do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
This was good.
cool.
Hopefully it helps you guys. It's a
All
big
right,
one.
yeah. All right, so thanks everybody. Thanks for listening and happy training.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Sounds good.